April 19th, 1775. A quiet dawn over Lexington, Massachusetts, was broken by the sharp crack of a musket. No one knows who fired the first shot, but in that single, fateful moment, history changed forever. The colonies had been simmering with unrest, and now the fire of rebellion had been ignited. The American Revolution had begun, a fight for independence, for freedom, and for a vision of a new world. But this wasn't just a sudden explosion of anger. The seeds of revolution had been planted long before, watered by years of growing tension between the 13 colonies and the British Crown. It began with taxes that were seen as unjust, imposed by a parliament where the colonists had no voice. The Stamp Act, the Tea Act, these were more than just laws. To the colonists, they were shackles. The rallying cry became louder. No taxation without representation. Then came the Boston Tea Party in 1773, a bold act of defiance as patriots hurled chests of British tea into the icy waters of Boston Harbor. Britain's response? Ruthless. The intolerable acts sought to crush the colonist spirit. But instead of submission, they found resistance. By 1774, the colonies sent representatives to Philadelphia. This was no casual gathering. It was the First Continental Congress, a desperate attempt to unite against the growing threat. And though many still hoped for peace, the storm of war was already on the horizon. April 19th, 1775. The British marched to Concord, their goal: seize colonial weapons and silence rebellion before it could spread. But they underestimated the resolve of the Minutemen. At Lexington, a line of farmers and shopkeepers stood their ground, muskets in hand, hearts pounding. And then it came. A single shot. Chaos erupted. Smoke filled the air. The British retreated under relentless attack, humiliated. The colonies had sent their message. They would not back down. In June 1775, the war escalated. At Bunker Hill, colonial forces faced the full might of the British Army. Outnumbered and outgunned, they fought fiercely. Though the British claimed victory, their losses were staggering. It was clear, this would not be an easy war. The colonies needed a leader, and they found one in George Washington. In the summer of 1775, he took command of the Continental Army. His task was monumental. He was leading an army of farmers and merchants, ill-equipped and untrained, against the most powerful military in the world. And then, in 1776, the unthinkable happened. The colonies declared their independence. On July 4th, the Declaration of Independence was signed. It was more than a piece of paper. It was a declaration of ideals, a promise of a nation built on freedom, equality, and the pursuit of happiness. But words on a page didn't guarantee victory. The British struck back hard. In the same year, they captured New York City, sending Washington's army into retreat. Morale was low, the future uncertain. But Washington was a man of determination. On Christmas night, 1776, he led his troops across the icy Delaware River in a daring surprise attack on Hessian forces in Trenton. The victory was small but crucial, a spark of hope in the darkest of times. By 1777, the war reached a turning point. In Saratoga, New York, American forces won a stunning victory, capturing an entire British army. News of the triumph spread across the Atlantic, convincing France to join the fight as an ally. French troops, supplies, and naval power turned the tide of the war. The revolution was no longer just a colonial rebellion, it was a global struggle. But the price of freedom was steep. The winter at Valley Forge tested the limits of human endurance. Washington's soldiers faced starvation, bitter cold, and disease. Yet, they emerged stronger, thanks to the training of a Prussian officer, Baron von Steuben. What had been a ragtag militia was now a disciplined army. The British, frustrated by their losses in the north, turned their attention to the south in 1780. They captured Charleston and Savannah, dealing heavy blows to American forces. But in the shadows of the swamps, guerrilla fighters like Francis Marion, the Swamp Fox, struck back using hit-and-run tactics to harass the British. And then came Yorktown. In 1781, British General Cornwallis found himself trapped. American and French forces surrounded him on land, while the French Navy blocked his escape by sea. For days, the bombardment was relentless. Finally, Cornwallis had no choice. On October 19, 1781, he surrendered. The war was over, or so it seemed. It would take 2 more years of negotiations before the Treaty of Paris was signed on September 3, 1783. Britain recognized the independence of the United States. A new nation was born. But this was no ordinary victory. It was a triumph of ideals over empire. It was a story of courage and sacrifice, of ordinary people fighting for extraordinary dreams. Yet, the revolution's promises were not fulfilled for all. Enslaved people remained in bondage. Native Americans were displaced. Women were excluded from the political power they helped build. The fight for equality was far from over. The American Revolution wasn't just a war. It was a transformation, an inspiration, a promise. And it leaves us with a question. How far are we willing to go to defend the ideals of freedom and justice? What do you think? Was the revolution worth the cost? Did it truly deliver on its promise of liberty? Share your thoughts, and if you found this journey into history compelling, don't forget to subscribe for more stories that will bring the past to life.